Until they bring the streetcars back, chapter 45. Graduation came down on me like a ton of bricks. All day at work, I thought about not going, but to see Gretchen walk across that platform would be worth all the hard feelings. I rode the Grand Mississippi home from my job, and I just about jumped out of my pants when I saw an old woman walking her dog along Grand. I yanked the cord and grabbed my lunchbox and scrambled for the rear door. It was Miss Kluski's dog. I bombed down the sidewalk in my heavy work boots, and I don't know why, but my heart was hammering, like finding McCluskey's dog would somehow bring me closer to my father. The shrunken woman and bow-legged dog toddled along ahead of me like old cronies who had survived the war together. When I caught up, I hung back for a minute to make sure. There couldn't be another dog like that, padding along beside the woman with his huge ears flopping and his baggy eyes shining, and when he noticed me, he started wagging his tail to beat the band. Pardon me, ma'am, I said as I pulled up even. I think I know your dog. The woman stopped, and McCluskey's dog sat at heel. She wore a gray wool watch cap and a long windbreaker that seemed way too warm for summer. Her gnarled hand held a leather leash. Why, Ambrose, do you have friends I don't know about? She said to the dog. Where did you get him? I said, From the Humane Society. He was my Christmas present. I kneeled, and the mongrel wagged his tail like he was beating out a brush fire, slurping my face with his monstrous tongue. You old son of a gun, I said as I rubbed the dog. Fell into hog's heaven. Ambrose was the name of my late husband. I lived alone for 19 years. Now Ambrose has come back to me. Do you believe in reincarnation? Geez, the woman's face looked a little like the dog's, all wrinkly and saggly with watery brown eyes. I don't know what that is, I told her. How do you know, Ambrose? A man near us owned him, treated him awful. I scratched the dog's side, and one of his rear legs started pumping like crazy. That's what they told me, that he had been terribly neglected. All he needed was lots of love, they said. But I recognized him right off. Ambrose found his way back to me. He sleeps with me, you know. That's swell. I wondered if this cute little lady really believed that McCluskey's dog was her dead husband, and if she did, what? My sister used to feed him peanut butter sandwiches. Did you call the Humane Society on the dreadful man? No, my dad did. I stood up and looked into her weathered face. Well, I may never have found Ambrose if he hadn't. Thank him for me, will you? I can't. He died. Oh, I'm so sorry, the woman paused. Your father must have been a good man. My eyes and throat started filling, and I had to look away. Yes, ma'am, he was. They rambled down Grand at their own pace, and I watched them for a minute, leaking tears into my dirty work shirt. I figured they were good for each other, and on the way home, I couldn't wait to tell Mom and Peggy. And she thinks the dog's her husband's who's come back from the dead, I told them at the supper table. She called it incarnation or something. How was he? Peggy said. Jim Dandy. She sleeps with him. We don't believe in reincarnation, my mother said. We believe we go to heaven when we die. I'm so happy he has a nice home, Peggy said. Yeah, so am I said. She's a funny old lady, kind of looks like McCluskey's dog. I think she's daffy, but the dog sure wasn't complaining. If we did believe in such a thing, my mother said thoughtfully, Horace would come back as a streetcar. She looked at us with a faint smile, and I realized I hadn't seen her face brighten like that since my father died. Yeah, he would, I said. He'd be a streetcar. We all began to laugh, and I thought my mother was going to be all right. While I was putting on the finishing touches in the bathroom mirror, Peggy leaned onto the door jamb and watched me. I always had trouble knotting my ties so it would come out balanced. Somehow, my mother got the blood out of my new double-breasted suit. You look good, Peggy said. Thanks. I wish you were graduating tonight. Yeah, I don't know what I'm dressing up for. I finished with the tie and took a comb to my damp hair. Cal, do you think Dad loved us? I turned and looked at my sister for a second, and I could tell it was really bothering her. Gosh, yeah, sure he did. I turned back to the mirror and finished my hair. He never said so, she said. Well, maybe he showed us by what he did for us. Yeah, maybe, but I wish he'd said so. I laid the comb on the sink and looked in the mirror. Yeah, so do I. When I was ready to go, my mother called me into the living room. She was perched on the edge of the sofa and nodded for me to sit in my father's chair. I have something I want to say to you, Calvin. Yeah, Mom? Geez, she had this real serious look, and I could tell she was kind of nervous. I wondered what was coming next, and I swallowed a lump in my throat. Are you sure you want to go tonight? It will be very hard for you, and I don't think you realize. Yeah, I know, but I want to go. Do you want me to go with you? Oh, gee, thanks, Mom, but I'll do all right. She kind of pursed her lips, and her eyes turned sad. Kelvin, you didn't kill your father. Geez, I looked at her and then at the floor. She was trying hard with her happiest stuff, but I knew I killed him, and I hated talking about it. I know you think you go to jail did it, and I think I let you think that to punish you for what you had done. But the company killed your dad. The streetcar was his life, and when they took that away, he was lost. But he thought I was a juvenile delinquent or something. I know, but I knew your father pretty well after all these years, and I can tell you for sure that he's mighty proud of you tonight. Crepes, it was like something let go inside of me, and I was crying and I couldn't stop. Somewhere tonight he knows what you did and why, and he's prouder of you than if you graduated at the top of your class. I was wiping my face with my hands, and my mother handed me a hanky, and I couldn't stop, and Peggy came in. What's the matter, Cal? Nothing, my mother said. It's going to be all right. My mother came over and sat on the edge of my father's chair and put her arm around me, and I was bawling like a baby. Then Peggy came over and hugged me, and I was getting my suit all wet. I rode a Grand Mississippi downtown and sat on the bench seat right behind the motorman, serving for some clue my dad had left. Knowing he probably drove this car 9 million times, for a second I thought I caught a whiff of his scent, a scent that still hung in his closet and sometimes haunted our apartment like a wild animal marking its territory. I thought about how far I'd come since I started my senior year and how much I'd seen, what I'd learned, how much I'd changed. If I could go back, I'd do a lot of things differently, I guess. And I don't know why, but I remembered what Pastor Ostrom had said one Sunday that fall, that love wasn't a warm feeling, something that just happens to you, but a decision you make, something you do. I didn't know if that was true, but if it was, then it wasn't Lola I had loved through it all, but Gretchen.